Hi, so I'm Emily Reichert, and I'm the CEO of Greentown Labs. And I've been asked to speak about how you transition from a PhD role, so a hard science technical role, to one in which you would start a business. And I have 3 pieces of advice for anyone who wants to do that. So the first piece of advice is that you need a set of skills that may go beyond you. So what I mean by that is that if you are going to build something from an idea that you have in the lab, what you really need to do is find others who can help you to build that thing in the lab. So what I mean by that, you might want to find yourself a business student to be your partner, because you'll bring counterbalance to the way that you organize the business. In fact, most of the strongest businesses we have here at Greentown Labs come with a technical founder and a business founder. So that's typically what you would want to do, is start thinking about who's going to be on your team. You want to understand very early on what is the market going to be for this thing. So the trap that I see technical founders falling into over and over is they are 100% in love with their technology. And therefore, it's hard to see how this technology wouldn't be useful. But that doesn't mean the market actually wants it. And so you really do need to go out there and do the customer, get the customer feedback or potential customer feedback. And you need to get a lot of it. And that's going to help you shape the direction that you would build your company into. And then finally, final piece of advice, just from my own career and life, is that you need to be open to opportunities. So the final piece of advice I can give you is one from my own career and my own life. And that is that you always, no matter what stage you're in, need to be looking and being open for opportunities. So it may be that the technology that you have in the lab may not be the best one to take to market. You may know another team that is a better one. So you may hear about a startup that's really interesting to you. You might want to join that one. So you don't want to close off opportunities. You always want to be open to what's out there, because you never know where it's going to take you. Well, to be an entrepreneur, you do not need to have an MBA. So that's the first thing I would tell you. And that's because there's lots of different roles in building a company. There needs to be a strong technical person if it's a technical company, and that can be the person that is critical to the business being formed. You can match that set of skills with a business person. So I think it's important to realize that there are actually very few teams that operate in the way that we're really trained by Silicon Valley to think about CEOs, which is it's the one Mark Zuckerberg or the one Steve Jobs or the one so-and-so that does the whole thing, because that's not really the way that it works. There's a team of people that are behind that person that maybe had the first idea, but then they need help to get it to market, and they need lots of different skills. So I think it's important to be looking for that team of people that's going to have all the skills that you need. And so you don't really need an MBA to do that. I think what entrepreneurs do, the characteristics that they have are that they're open to risk-taking. That's very important in terms of how that compares to an academic type job. An academic type job maybe has risk up front when you're trying to get tenure, but then you've got a lot of security. It's the opposite may be true with building a business, or not quite the opposite, but you never totally get rid of that risk, because at the very early stages it's super risky. You're trying something no one else has done, and that's really hard. And maybe as the business grows and you get some investment, then some of the pressure comes off, but there's always going to be risk involved with an early stage business, and so you just have to know that and be okay with it. That said, there are definitely, as I mentioned, different roles you can play at different points in the business. You can join a startup when it's maybe already had its first round of funding, so then there's less risk there. Or maybe it's had its second round of funding, there's less risk. So it kind of depends on the age of the startup. The other characteristic I think is very important is being able to wear many hats. So people that are good at multitasking and people that are okay with not just focusing on one thing at a time are going to make the strongest entrepreneurs, because anytime you're an entrepreneur, especially at the beginning, you are not only the person that is developing the technology, you have to understand it to be able to sell it. You have to do anything related to the accounting. You have to hire the people. You have to find some office space. You have to set up the internet. All of those things are you. So it's not a job in which you can just do one thing and focus like you can whenever you're doing academic research. So academic research, a lot of things are taken care of for you, and that allows you to focus really, really hard on one particular topic very intensively, and that's why you're able to get those papers and publications and really contribute to the body of work that is science. And that's very important too, but it's very different from the characteristic that you often see in an entrepreneur. So I found one of the most useful courses I took was in early stage capital. So understanding how startups get funded and the language around that, a Series A round of investment, a seed round, a Series B round, what is a term sheet, all these things that are about the funding that you're going to need to raise. And that's very important, because when you go and try to sell your idea to someone, you need to understand, how am I actually going to be able to use the money that they're giving me? How much should I ask for? What's expected? What are the common terms? And so that knowledge of how early stage capital works, I'd say, is pretty critical. The other thing that I think is really important is communication and presentation skills. I'd say probably somewhere between 60 to 90% of a startup pitch that is successful is because of the person's presentation skills. So how do they communicate their story? How do they grab the person that's listening, the investor on the other side? And so being able to, tell your story in an effective way and communicate not only what's the unique thing technically, but what's the unique business aspect of what you're doing that is going to be different than anything else. That's a really important thing to be able to do. So in order to start a company in the clean tech sector, I would say you need some good passion, risk tolerance, and generally really want to have a big impact, because if you enter this sector, all of those things are going to be true. So how do you choose a problem to work on? Well, in clean tech, there are just an innumerable number of really global challenges that can be worked on, and that is, how do you basically do more with less, right? So how do you make a solar panel more efficient? How do you make a manufacturing process more efficient? How do you use water more efficiently? How do you do agriculture without using so many chemicals? So clean technology generally, it's finding a big efficiency related problem, or a problem in which you're reducing waste into the environment, and then attacking that problem, usually using technology. So often it actually happens, it starts the other way. Someone has a technology and they want to find a clean chemistry or a clean power or some other application for it. And I'd say that what you should know is that it's a tough industry to penetrate, because there are so many kind of major long-time players in the energy market, and it's also a industry that's very highly regulated. And so if you know both of those things, you can set yourself up early, again, through the customer discovery process, to make sure that you have all the information that you need to be able to operate in that particular market sector. So say you are interested in creating a new type of solar concentrator. You have to understand, how is that going to interconnect into a home energy system, which then has to interconnect into the grid, has to be, probably have some kind of metering that interacts with a utility. And so you're talking about a very large corporation that's going to be incentivized or not incentivized to work with you. So I think understanding all of that up front as much as you can, having kind of a broad view of the energy sector before you start, can be really valuable in just not being so frustrated later. Kind of official characteristics that you need to have in order to become an entrepreneur. And I have to say, I think it's very open, because there are entrepreneurs of all different types. Starting a business can be one that we've been talking about, which is a very highly technical, high growth type of startup environment, and that may require a degree and support for the entrepreneur and things that entrepreneur may not know if they're very technical. On the other hand, there are lots of other types of entrepreneurship. You can take an existing product off the shelf that exists already in one country and transport that in a different way to another country, or build on it, or a different market. So I think that there's an ingenuity that is shared among people that do this, and it doesn't necessarily, it's not limited by background, I don't think. And entrepreneurship in general is not limited by education. I think there are probably very few people that are born entrepreneurs. It probably comes through an experience that you have in your lifetime, behaviors that you see modeled or behaviors that you're taught. And again, I would emphasize that in a particular entrepreneurial endeavor, there is a team. So different people can bring different skill sets. So one person may bring the sales perspective and the sales, the willingness to go and sell the company over and over, while the other one brings the really strong technical background that's going to make the salesperson credible. I think that the main thing to know is that there are increasingly a number of different ways that you can raise capital that don't have to do with the institutional channels that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years. So it used to be that you would have to go to certain venture capitalists in big offices out in suburbs, and they would be mostly empty. Today, you can go on a website like Indiegogo or Kickstarter or many other platforms and raise money for your idea, millions of dollars for your idea, and it's much, it's a broader audience. It's a broader pool of people that are supporting you. And so you almost eventually obviate the need for that very traditional single decision maker capital type model. And that gets to, I think, the other thing that people really need to know about how things are changing, and that is the leadership model. Traditionally, many industries have the very top-down business model, and when you look at industries that are going to survive and thrive in the future, there are going to be really kind of groups of leaders, very smart people who are working together to solve problems, versus one person telling a set of people what to do, telling another set of people what to do. There's also you need to think about how training is going to happen. So it used to be that people would go to get educated maybe every now and then to get some updated training, maybe if it was in the budget in a given year. But things are changing so fast now that companies and technologies that are going to succeed are going to need to have constant retraining. So that would argue for a much less hierarchical structure in how things are set up. Everyone has the knowledge to contribute and can do so by continually bringing knowledge into the company. So I think that is how innovators of the future are already thinking and will continue to move along. I think that we should take good ideas from anywhere and allow them to be nurtured in the United States to grow into businesses that create jobs in the United States. At the same time, we should be open with our borders in providing products and services that are going to be useful well beyond our borders. And I think clean energy provides a good example. There are many countries that are trying to transition to clean energy and actually jump over the dirty energies. We're building a lot of things in the United States that can be directly applied towards those markets, and it behooves us to get products into those markets. At the same time, again, on clean energy, there are entrepreneurs around the world that have amazing ideas, and we need to support them. We need to find places to help them grow their companies, and I hope that the United States continues to be one of the places where we are able to attract entrepreneurs who have the best ideas.